Alrighty, folks, we're live. Hey, so tonight, very, very special guests. We have the cadre from the Tactical Anatomy Summit. I took this class a couple of months ago, and I'll tell you what, it changed the way that I train forever. And I just wanted to share it with you guys. So here we have on the panel, and hopefully we're going to get some more to come in later. But right now, what we have on the panel is Andy Anderson, Troy Miller, Edwina Parker. We have Steve Moses. We have Shane Kerwin. We have Alan McBee, and we have Tammy. What was the name again? Bartels, right?
Yep.
Nailed it. Awesome. All right. Cool. So I just before we get into it, I just want to say thanks a bunch for for taking your time out of your busy schedules to help me share this with everybody. And so I'll just jump right into the very, very first question. Okay, like, what gave you the idea to create this curriculum?
Well, if you guys don't mind, I'll start. I attended in 2023 Dr. James Williams' Tactical Anatomy Shooting with X-ray Vision Instructor course with Andy, with Troy, with Chuck, and amongst a bunch of other people like Greg Elifritz. I mean, the other thing that's kind of cool about this, you being an FTA member, is about 90% of all the instructors in that first class were FTA members. We got a great pick. Having said that, I decided immediately after that particular instructor course that I was going to start teaching at least a 4-hour block on 3D defensive shooting. I got that started, and then I started looking around to see if any of the other instructors that attended that one, and I didn't see very many classes. Andy was definitely running something at the time. Chuck was doing some stuff that was tactical anatomy related. But for the most part, it appeared to me that this word was not getting out to the people that really need to see it. So I gingerly and hopefully approached these guys, this specific group here, and I asked them if they would be interested in developing a tactical anatomy summit. And much to my surprise, my request was not rejected. And so we decided to have the first one. The thing that we want to do as much as anything is get this message out to as many people, instructors, and just concealed carriers, armed professionals, armed homeowners, that there are things that we can do that will increase the odds that we will survive a deadly force encounter in a very short time frame when seconds matter. And the longer that attacker or attackers has to attempt to injure us or kill us, the greater the chances are that they're going to succeed.
I'm inclined to agree. Absolutely. Anybody else have a take on it?
I got to follow up to that.
Yeah.
So when I first became serious about training, I was looking for classes. Between my time on the ambulance and working at a level one trauma center, I've been treating gunshot wounds for over 30 years. And I've seen many people shot multiple times where it did not stop the attacker. So whenever I decided to get serious about learning how to defend myself and my family, I was looking for courses to go to. And I found references to Dr. Williams's shooting with X-ray vision, but he was not teaching at that time. And I was thinking that was the missing part. And I went to the class with Steve when he started his instructor training because I wanted to learn how he conveyed this information to his students. And so I wanted to do something similar because it's not just hitting the X-ray, it's you've got to be able to visualize the internal anatomy. And I was wanting to come up with a way to try and convey this information to the students. So I developed my course, and Steve contacted me shortly afterwards, and we were like, hey, this is something we should be able to do. Not just for the individual person who's wanting to learn defensive tactics, but also, I think more importantly, for instructors, so that instructors can also pick up this information and pass it on to their students also.
Yeah, that was one thing that really kind of brought me into this course. The fact that this is stuff that's just not getting out to anybody else. Most classes that you see, You have the 8-inch circle in the chest, you got the 4-inch circle in the head, or they just, they just straight up just decide, you know what, we're just going to put USPSA targets out here. And I think the general consensus from dudes that have been there and done that is that that's just too generous of a target. Like, so the concept of shooting with X-ray vision, that was pretty new for me. So, yeah. Now, let's move forward to another question, okay? And so, let's see. So, what brought you all together, particularly for this endeavor? Like, who started this? And then, so was it you, Steve, that got the whole band together?
Steve.
Yes, sir. I was
Steve.
I guess, the ringleader, if you want to call that. And before I get too far away from this, I'd like to kick this over to Chuck to talk about the origin of the instructor class itself. He has been, he assisted Dr. Williams, I think, in the last 3 instructor courses that were offered, definitely in the 2 that I attended. So, Chuck, would you give us a little bit of history about the inception of this particular course, the instructor course?
So I first met Doc. I'd read about him in, I don't know, late 90s. If memory serves, it's been a while, obviously. And then I had a chance to go to one of his shooting with X-ray vision classes, the instructor school in the Kansas City area. When I heard he was going to be in the area, I jumped on that. We made friends from there. He was teaching for a while, and then he took a hiatus, quite frankly, because he was tired of dealing with department politics and the issues with getting hosted and things like that. And then I want to say I think he quit teaching for, it was a good 10 years, minimum of 10 years. Might have been more than that, 10 to 15. And myself, Greg Ellifritz, a few other people had been bugging him to rethink it. And he finally got the mindset of doing that. I know he was tired of being the multi-state traveling trainer and that sort of thing, because the road warrior thing gets old real fast, especially for some people. So we had been on him about that. And Bill Armstrong at Meade Hall had also been one of the people asking him. He took a liking to Bill. The range facility, the classroom facility, all of it was set up perfect for the needs of the class. Not a big drive for Doc to get to Oklahoma from Texas. So he told me he was going to bring the instructor class back, and invited me to be an assistant instructor, myself and Dave Maglio, which I did not see coming. I was really honored, and I'm still ate up with imposter syndrome over that don't think I'm qualified to be team teaching. But we have done it. It was either the past 3 or 4 years. Right. Ever since he brought it back from that long hiatus, I've been helping him teach once a year at Meade Hall. So after we had been doing that a few times, I recall, Steve, you going to the class and then coming back the year, I believe the direct year after you had been there. And you had brought up the idea of trying to spread this knowledge out more on a nationwide aspect. The issues with docs only doing once a year, things like that. So, yeah, we started discussing it. I remember you broaching the subject, and I was immediately on board, and here we are.
Right on. Yeah. So, if you guys wouldn't mind, I want to bring Shane in. I want to get his perspective on, what did it feel like for these guys? Like, take us back to when you got approached about this,
Yeah, so it was fairly recently, and Steve reached out to me, and honored and humbled and kind of speechless, actually. I had been integrating tactical anatomy, in a 360-degree environment in my classes for a couple years, and was familiar with Doc Williams's stuff, and had been wanting to get into a class, just like Chuck said. He took quite a bit of a hiatus, and so when I saw that he was back doing it, and then I saw what Steve was doing and the guys, I was real interested in it to actually go be an attendee. And then Steve reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to give this a try and help us out teaching a couple blocks at Roll Range USA in Nashville? And that was kind of the impetus of me getting brought on board. And then, we had a discussion about staying on for subsequent summits after that. So, and that's kind of how it all worked out. So I'm just super happy to be involved with it and try and contribute as much as I possibly can.
Right on. And also, how about you, Troy? Like, what did it feel like for you to get brought into all this?
Well, I, like Chuck, have been around for a while. So one of the advantages of being older than dirt, or actually older than the rocks that dirt came from, is that I also knew of Dr. Williams all the way back to the 90s and missed training with him back then, but always thought, gosh, why didn't I think of that? It was just such a great idea and so important. So it was something that I kind of talked to the team that I supported back in the day about. But when I heard that he was coming out of retirement or semi-retirement, and the opportunity to train with him, Chuck Haggard, and Dave Malio in 23 came up, then I got in there and everybody was there that practically I knew everybody in the class. So I was grateful. It was tremendous. It was like homecoming. Steve then invited me to be involved with this endeavor, and I was all over it like a chicken on a June bug. It was just something I couldn't wait to do. Dr. Williams was nice enough to ask me to come back. That was 23 that we were all trained together, except for Shane, who took the class this last time. But I was asked to come back in 24 and do a lecture block, and then this last iteration, I just came up to kibitz more than anything else, and had a great time doing that. Dr. Williams asked me to come back the third week in May next year, so I'd be remiss if we didn't plug the next SXRVI as well as the Tactical Anatomy Summit. The instructor class will go on again next year, the third weekend in May at Meade Hall. And Dr. Williams asked me to come up and help with work with Bill Armstrong there, the host, to work with the simulator, which is a really big advantage to the instructor course if people are interested in doing that. Neither dilly or dally, because it will probably be the last, or maybe the last time that the course offers. Dr. Williams has said that he's getting ready to wrap it up again and retire for good. That also may be a Dave Spalding kind of retirement too. So we hope, and those of you that know him know what I mean when I say that. So we hope to keep him around forever, but the reality is I wouldn't count on that. If you want to do the SXRVI, do it. So shooting with X-ray vision instructor, that is. Don't need to be too acronym rich there.
I'm a big fan of acronyms. I love acronyms.
Love TLAs.
Yeah.
That's
TLAs are
or a 3-letter acronym.
Yeah. So let's move on to our next question, right? So how often would you like to teach this class? And what areas of the country would you like to teach it? Who wants to take the first bite of the
I'll take a stab at it. Probably, at least speaking for myself, 4 to 5 times maximum. This is somewhat difficult logistically to get 5 instructors from 4 different states together in order to make this happen. And we need to work around everyone's schedule. We think everyone that's in this cadre is critical. Doesn't mean that if something came up with a problem, we couldn't go ahead and proceed if one of the cadre instructors was unable to attend. But speaking for myself, I'd say, quarterly.
Right on. I would love to see it go quarterly. So what areas of the country would you guys like to take this to? Like how are we deciding where this is getting taught? Are we just, hosting wherever will have us, or are there certain corners of the country that you're targeting?
Andy, do you want to address that?
I'll pick this one up. I probably have the most prop-heavy live fire shooting ever, besides maybe John Hearn. And it takes literally a day for me to pack up everything. and my Tahoe is loaded down, and I have too much stuff to fly, so it's going to have to be within driving distance. So pretty much we're limited to the central United States. So far, we've gone to Nashville and we've gone to Fort Worth. I don't know how much further east and west we're going to expand beyond that. But we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah.
We've
I want
got
to see it go to more
Pines.
places.
We've got Cohutta Pines next year. Tammy's hosting us, and you're hosting us. The next one is 28th and March 1st. There in Memphis, with Memphis. And then we've got Cohutta Pines and Tammy's place in Kansas. Tell us more about that, Tammy.
So we are hosting you guys in October out at the Flint Hills Shooting Range, which is in Oldsburg, Kansas, just a little bit north of Manhattan. It's a range. It's the same range that hosts the, oh my goodness, ASP Summit every year. And so we've got 4 ranges out there. We've got 4 classrooms. We have housing facilities. We've got cabins that are individual rooms. We have dorms that'll sleep 30 men and 30 women. So we're really excited to have you guys out there and bring lots of people in and expose people. And it's a great location because it's so close. We're so close here in the Midwest. Everyone can fly in. There's an airport locally. And then it's a short drive down to Oklahoma to take the instructor class.
Right on. Yeah.
And one of the other benefits about the Kansas range is we're usually limited to the size of the range because Kansas has multiple ranges that we're going to have access to. We'll be expanding our classroom for the Kansas location.
So logistically, that can only help you guys because, while one instructor is presenting, the other instructor can be setting up the next stage, So that's pretty interesting. Yeah. All righty. We got a couple more questions coming in. So let's see. How often, actually, let's ask this one. So what should students expect from taking this class? How's this class different than other shooting classes?
Well, I think Edwina would be a great one to
I am jumping on this one.
Yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
So I took the first summit. Sorry, guys. My Velcro dog has decided that he's going to get in here. I took the first one that was offered. We hosted it in Fort Worth. And I told all the guys then it was the best defensive class I've ever taken. Because if you look at all the classes out there and everything that's being taught, back to what you said earlier, we're looking at IDPA or USPSA targets with the big circle or the A zone. And this class said no. And Andy actually in Memphis or in Nashville said, when do you want that guy to stop? And I think that was one of the most powerful things I've heard. Obviously, we want him to stop before he does more of what he's planning on doing. And this is the class that teaches that. I took it as a student. I've assisted in the next 2 and took the instructor course this year. So I am all in with it. And I think it's good for not only our normal students, but for instructors as well. This information needs to be out there. It needs to be realistic. If you go look at YouTube videos, what do you see over and over and over again? And you see as many shots on target as possible, but then you look at the target, and those of us that have been through tactical anatomy know that 98% of those shots didn't stop anything or anybody. So it's huge.
Yeah, that was really personally my biggest takeaway as well. I mean, some of the guys in this panel are medical professionals, spent your careers looking at bullet holes for a living. And, not every A zone hit is going to be an actual fight stopping hit.
No. And when Chuck's section goes through the historical gunfights and Tales from the Streets, you start realizing that Troy and Andy have put the medical out there, and now you're actually seeing results, and you're seeing what those shots didn't do, and what they didn't do was stop them fast enough.
they brought a lot to this class. Like just seeing the autopsy photos and the X-rays and stuff like that.
Right.
That was absolutely huge. You know,
Yeah,
like to
I thought
see,
so too. Yeah.
that really kind of nailed it home. So let me ask Troy and Andy here. You know, this is a question that I'm just kind of coming up with right here, kind of off the cuff. So what inspired you to bring that kind of visual evidence to the class? You know, like was there a thought that, hey, we're going to risk scarring people, we're going to risk scaring people for the sake of educating them? Like, walk me through that line of logic.
Sure. I'm going to jump in there first, or Andy will steal all the good stuff to say. So he's a hard act to follow. So I'm going to jump in here. I think that Dr. Williams, in his introduction, does a really good job of saying what Andy, I also don't want to speak for Andy, but what I think is difficult, because we are physicians and we do operate under that part of the Hippocratic Oath that always sounds better. Everything always sounds better in Latin, but primum non nocere, which is first do no harm. And there is nothing but talking about doing harm in this class. We are, as he aptly has graciously agreed to give introductory lectures to add his years of experience to our program, he also talks about the doctrine of competing harms, which I sum up in my own verbiage along that is basically that what we're doing really is no different than elevating the concept of surgical debridement to a societal level. There are times when, like with a sick appendix, we've got to cut that out for the betterment of the organism, and there are times when we have to do things to other humans to rapidly incapacitate them. And unfortunately, the physiology and anatomy of rapid incapacitation are kissing cousins with the anatomy and physiology of death. Dr. Williams has said that he is held to be one of the foremost authorities in the world on killing people. That's an unfortunate turn of phrase for a man who has spent most of his life practicing the healing arts, that this is what he's known for. Andy and I take a risk with doing that as well, as do all of us when we pick up the mantle of teaching this material. But in the doctrine of competing harms, I'm okay with that if that helps a good person who is morally upright and not a victim of a violent criminal actor, because they had this material at hand in the moment when they needed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you're
Andy, what do you
asking a
think, man?
question. You're asking a question about why we show what we show. Whenever people my age was growing up, hunting and growing up with guns was common, and people had a familiarity with what firearms would and would not do. Now it seems like the majority of people get their firearm training watching TV, movies, and playing Call of Duty, and it's very unrealistic. And several years ago, over the last 10, 15 years, I've noticed that the interns coming in to start their emergency medicine residency did not really understand what bullets would do. And they either overestimated or underestimated, the potential of certain gunshot wounds. So about 4 years ago, I started a ballistics lab for all the incoming emergency medicine interns to give them an example of what different bullets would and would not do. And I have seen people come into the emergency department who's been shot more than 10 times, but none of them were in a vital area. So it goes back to that question that I picked up from Tom Givens: how soon do you want an attacker to stop trying to kill you? And that's what I started looking at, was we've got to get this information to the students, so the gun is not a magic talisman that's going to scare away the bad guys. And you cannot just randomly point it and pull the trigger. You have to make precise hits to certain areas if you want to stop this attack as soon as possible. And the sooner the attack is stopped, the less likely you're going to be injured or killed. And so, like I said, I had come across Doc Williams' information in the interweb, but he had stopped teaching at that time. So whenever I found out that he was having the instructor's course, shooting with X-ray vision instructor course, I jumped on it because I wanted to get this information out to my students and to other instructors so that we could be more effective in preparing people to survive that lethal altercation.
Absolutely. Yeah. So my next question is going to be for, the legendary lawman, Chuck Haggart, and then also for Doc K over here. All right. So my main questions is that you guys have seen a lot of stuff out in the field and also, on the street. How did that play into, how did those experiences contribute to what you brought to the class? Because a lot of the stuff that y'all brought was really eye-opening as well.
So, and to kind of dovetail into what was just said, I think, like Andy said, people aren't growing up hunting anymore. And so they don't have, and most people don't have an experiential base in violence. And so, we have to make them understand what violent encounters really are. So they have that basis of understanding. So as, we continue to teach them, if they do find themselves in, a critical incident or event, it's not something new that, it's brand new exposure to them where it might shut them down. One of the things that I do and bring that experiential base in and in my classes is going from the transition from the fight to the post-fight part, and what are some of the physiological and psychological effects that adrenaline and cortisol that have on our systems. And probably one of the biggest things that I put out to people is I posed them a question while I was up instructing, and I said, hey, what's a gunfight? And you got various answers, but I said at the end of the day, it's just a problem. It's has deadly consequences, and it involves lethal force implements. But at the end of the day, it's really just a problem for us to solve. So we need to understand the steps of violence and what's going to go on in our body and what's going to go on in their body, so we can have a mental mind map of kind of what's going on, process new information, and then be able to solve that problem so we can go home to the people that we care about. So I think, wrapping this kind of up and handing it over to Chuck is, the experiential base that all the instructors have in the various aspects of their jobs, former jobs. We bring that in so we can kind of help build that experiential base in students so they can apply the lessons that are learned.
Right on. Yeah. Chuck, what do you think?
So on top of being a ballistic nerd, and everybody else being involved knows that, and I've been involved in, like, I was one of the original members of International Wound Ballistics Association when that was first stood up by Dr. Fackler. So I had known him and talked to him long distance at the time. Friends with Dr. Gary Roberts and a number of other people who are in this ballistics research field. I'm in no way as qualified as them, but I have studied this extensively over the years. One of the reasons that I got into that was when I became a cop in the 80s, there was a lot of theories of what bullets you want, how bullets work, what bullets do, what will bring successful, quick incapacitation to a criminal suspect. And I got into police work right about the time that 1986 FBI Miami gunfight happened. And of course, that was pretty famous in the gun sphere. And there was a lot of things being put out back in the day about, the 9mm doesn't work and you need to have a 45 and things like that. On my job, we had 357 Magnum revolvers with what was considered to be a legendary man-stopper bullet. We had a couple of cases where it didn't work as legendarily as we would like to have done. We eventually went to 9mm because that was a trend in the 90s. And then some of the ammunition that we picked early on also didn't work. It really didn't work well at all. So I took a dual path of looking for what bullets are effective and then looking into why they're effective, and then where to put those bullets. So that's a genesis of how I got involved in studying tactical anatomy, attending Doc Williams' course. And in the course of my career, I've seen a lot of both officer involved and street level shootings. I was a officer involved shooting investigator. I was on that team for decades. Was involved in a very busy SWAT team over the time there at my first job. So I had a lot of experience at the street level looking at officer involved shootings, investigating officer involved shootings, investigating shootings in the street, a few citizen defensive shootings, that sort of thing, and getting an idea of what's effective and why it's effective. So one of the things in conversation at dinner during the past summit that Andy and Troy and I were talking about was I saw a lot of the people that those guys never saw. Like there were people who would get shot and basically walk off their bullet wound. And some of those were things like a headshot, like a guy being shot in the head and it not being incapacitating, and them not going to the emergency room because they don't think it's worth an emergency room bill and they're just going to go sleep it off. So that you know, I was seeing the guys that the coroner saw, I was seeing the guys that the doctor saw, and then I was seeing the guys that never made it to either one of those venues. So in that regard, that is the totality of the package of what I bring to the table as an instructor in this course.
And I'm grateful for it. Absolutely. We haven't heard from Alan yet, so I'm going to ask Alan this question. All right. So how hard was it or how easy was it to transition from 2-dimensional targets to 3-dimensional targets? One of the biggest things that stuck out to me in this course was the fact that we were using a lot of 3-dimensional targets, and some of those targets had faces, some of those targets had shirts. So it was a lot for us to pay attention to cognitively. Like, can you talk to us a little bit about how you came up with these ideas and some of the props you used?
You're muted.
Uh-oh. Hey, Alan, you're muted, man. I still can't hear you. Okay. All right. So that was Alan. Anyone else want to take that question?
I think Andy could do this probably as good as anyone, because that's something that he does in his street survival. Dadgummit, Andy, I forgot it was street survival skills and the importance of 3D visualization block.
So
yeah, that would be wonderful. Yeah.
I was looking for a 3-dimensional target, and the shooting targets that I came up that I found that are designed to be shot had a big problem, is that you couldn't see inside. So it's the same thing as your typical target, that you can hit on the external anatomy, but you really don't know the pathway of the bullet, and if you actually hit the structure you're trying to hit. John Hearn has got a target coming out soon that I am anxiously waiting on. That's going to be a great target because it has the head, torso, all in one unit, and it's hollow on the inside, so that way you can set up the structures of vital anatomy on the inside. And then as you're turning the target, you'll be faced with the problem of, okay, now I'm no longer, when we go to the range, the targets are always perpendicular. And in real life, in an active shooter situation, that may not be the case. They may be quartered, they may be sideways. So you've got a problem you've got to solve. And I'm anxious for John to come out with his targets, because that's going to be super easy to put together and work with. The ones that I'm using are actually designed for displaying shirts and tops in a clothing shop. They're extremely brittle. They're pretty much one-time use. So I'm looking for something. I think John Hearn is probably coming out with the best 3D anatomy target. So I'm anxious for that to come out.
I can't wait. Like, I want to be one of the first to buy some of those, because I've been hungry for stuff like that for a while. I think we're all kind of familiar with the cardboard targets from Shoot Steel, and then there's also some stuff from like Birchwood Casey, but the stuff that John Hearn is really looking at, that's looking pretty promising. Yeah. So We have a couple more questions, but before we get into the questions, I'd like to thank our sponsors here. Okay, and Steve, I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk for some of these sponsors here in just a second, but I just wanted to read off the list. And so the Tactical Anatomy event sponsors include CCW Safe, Firearms Training Association, Wilderness Tactical, also known as thewilderness.com, concealedcarry.com, personal survival solutions, and the Complete Combatant. So, Steve, would you like to speak a little bit more to any of these sponsors?
Yes, I absolutely would. We're really getting some great support from people in the industry that I really respect, that are actually dedicated to, putting out products or providing information that would, allow us to practice what we need to do, which a big part of that's going to be equipment focused. CCW Safe would be the exception. And one of the reasons for that is basically if you're in that class or if you're listening to that show, you need to have legal liability coverage in the event that something happens. Uh, when you're in the back of a police car or in jail is not the time to be Googling defense attorneys in your area. So we appreciate their support, the Farm Traders Association, which I am associated with. I'm a customer service rep. We try to get a lot of good content out there and also provide legal liability coverage for firearm traders. So both of them were sponsors. In addition, Personal Survival Solutions, that is Shane and Callie's company. They're providing us with targets. They came out with a Tactical Anatomy Summit target that we should be able to make available to the public pretty quick. That is downloadable. That is, it's something that once you have a copy of it, you can generate these targets with an outline that identify the areas that we think should probably be considered as most likely to stop a threat as soon as possible. Wilderness Tactical has joined us. They provided us with some really incredible pouches. Concealedcarry.com is going to provide 10% discounts to members that use their code from the Tactical Anatomy Summit. And at last but not least, two of our favorite people in the world, Brian and Shelley Hill, they donated a certificate to a 2-day complete combatant class of, whatever class that the person wanted to take. So we've got some great supporters. I'm working on one more right now. And one of the things that I'm going to say is that the benefit provided from all of these sponsors does not come to us. It goes to the students. So we're not making any money from that. They're not giving us financial support. What we're trying to do is provide a lot of value for people when they take this course, because, after all, it's a 2-day course. A lot of people have to travel expenses. We want to make it so that they come away not only with a lot of intangibles, but a few tangibles as well.
Oh, thanks so much for touching on that, Steve. Let's move forward to it's going to be one of the last questions of the night, but I want to hear from everybody. Okay. So I'd like to hear from everybody. What is your favorite myth that you busted during this class? And let's start with Troy. Okay.
Oh, well, my myth busting from the last time we were asked this question was busted by Chuck. So I'm going to have to say that my it was unbusted. It was put back together. The last time I was asked this question, I said that pistols don't work, and Chuck reminded me of something that I have taken on, and that is pistols don't work until they do, and they work pretty well if you can shoot. To paraphrase or hopefully almost direct quote, our mutual friend, or Chuck's friend and my idol, Pat Rogers, the late Pat Rogers. That was a reminder that I got. So while the pistols are going to save you It's hard to rely on a cordless drill in a fight. It doesn't have anywhere near the energy that you can apply with either a carbine rifle or shotgun. But if you know where to put your rounds and you can shoot and hit those places, it actually worked pretty good. So it's a myth that busted and then unbusted and repaired, and let's break it again. So
That's awesome. Yeah. Let's see. So, Edwina, I'd like to hear from you next. What is your favorite myth that was busted in this class? I think you're muted. I'm sorry.
You're muted.
You're still muted.
I was trying to unmute it, but I've got a Velcro dog trying to climb in my lap. So there were so many of them. I think the most, I'm going to take just the most recent, the self-defense ammo I've been carrying for a while now, severely underperformed on Sunday afternoon. And it is no longer in my carry gun. So I think learning, and we've seen it summit after summit, people bring in their magic bullets and they test it and realize that, one, they may not get the penetration needed. Two, they may get over penetration, which is just as bad. And I think personally that was a big one.
You're muted, Memphis.
That's awesome. We hit the trifecta. All right. So, but yeah, like that parallels, I think, a journey that a lot of us have. You know, we all got the wrong gun. We load it with the wrong ammo, put it in a wrong holster, and then we carry hunky dory like that for years. It takes classes like this in order for us to bust those bubbles, you know? So, Steve, how about you next? What was your favorite myth that was busted?
Well, it is that shots to the heart with low energy handgun rounds are not instant fight stoppers. If you make it to the emergency room with a bullet wound to the heart alive, there is probably a pretty good chance that you are going to survive. And if you made it to the emergency room alive, that meant that you didn't have to quit fighting right then and there. The same is true for your attacker. So shooting them to the heart and then expecting an instant stopper may be very, very disappointing to find out. By the same token, there are other areas above the heart that tend to be much more effective. Troy could, probably lean in on that a little bit. And what we want to do is teach you how to stop people as soon as possible. So hopefully that myth we have effectively busted.
Awesome. Yeah. So, Alan, do we have any sound back yet? Okay.
Turn your volume up, Alan.
Yeah. That's not going to happen. All right. So, how about he's moral support. That's awesome. All right. So, Alan, if you can type your reply into the private chat that we have here, or if you could type it in a social, if you could type it in the Facebook Messenger, I can read it out for you. Okay. But, that's probably the best we can do for now. I'm sorry. But, how about you, Doc?
What chat?
Yeah. So, all righty. So moving forward, let's get to Doc K. So what's your favorite myth that was busted?
Steve kind of stole mine, but I would have to probably say, as we were teaching in Nashville on the previous summit, we were up here on my way, that volume of fire at speed doesn't necessarily mean good hits. And I kind of knew that already, but to see the students in the class, even though we had kind of talked about visual processing and getting good hits and, not overshooting your headlights, as soon as we got into Andy's little competition where you had to shoot precisely against an opponent, the wheels fell off for a lot of people. And so it just reinforced, I think, the myth that just because you can shoot fast doesn't mean that you can shoot precisely and accurately. And what we've learned in this summit is that you need to be able to shoot at acceptable speeds, but also get precise and accurate shots to stop the fight as quickly as possible.
Absolutely. Yeah. I found that true for myself as well. Like after there was one drill that we had where it involved clays,
Yep.
but the clays were hidden underneath the shirt. So you couldn't really see it. You just had to know from, the structure of the anatomy, where you needed to hit. And so what I kept seeing in myself and in others was I didn't get the first hit. I didn't get the second hit. So it was just panic fire until hopefully something got.
Yep.
So let's move forward to Andy. Andy, what do you think was what was your favorite myth that was busted?
Well, like I said, I think we're trying to bust that what you see on movies, TV, and video games like Call of Duty is not real life. The mythical one-stop bullet man stopper really doesn't exist. Chuck does a great example of using very heavily marketed, popular defensive rounds and then showing you their weakness. And I don't know, I think every class we've had someone have an aha moment and say, my defensive load has to be changed. So I think Chuck probably does the biggest myth busting every time because there's always someone that's surprised that their defensive ammo, like Edwina said, that they've been carrying for years, works great on the marketing, but in real life may underperform.
Man, so you're telling me my RIP rounds aren't going to do the job?
I can show you some CT scans and x-rays to show you how they underperform.
I'm actually kind of interested in that. All right. But moving forward. Yeah. So Chuck, I would love to hear it from you, Chuck. What's your favorite myth that was busted?
So part of my presentation is walking in specifically to myth bust. What makes effective handgun ammunition, that sort of thing. I try to get across to people that guns are not death rays, that they do not work like they do on TV or in the movies. That's it's the old commercial line. That's not how any of this works. But at the same time, if you apply the principles, if you pick good ammo, you pick a good gun, you have your marksmanship squared away, and you know where to shoot along with how to shoot, which is as important as when to shoot. You have all of that tied up, that they can be dramatically effective very quickly. Whereas if you plink people around the edges or in the giblets, it really doesn't work that well. When I do my ballistic gelatin demo, talk about what effective ammunition looks like, what are the performance parameters that we are looking for, and then caution people to be smart buyers, to be smart, to make smart purchases, because some of the most hyped ammunition on the market, some of the most expensive ammunition on the market is actually some of the worst ammunition on the market. It's stuff that you actively want to avoid. But busting the myth of magic bullets, that magic bullets exist, that there is some way to get around physics, and that something new in the firearms world is going to make a difference when human physiology hasn't changed for 100,000 years. That's that I walk into it specifically to myth bust. And as the other folks have said, I can, every single class we've had, more than one person, typically two or three, tell me that they will ask me questions like, where do you buy the ammo you recommend? Or like at the when we were in Nashville, I had people asking me, is there anything in the store out front that I can buy that would be a better choice? Because they were looking to change their ammo right then and there, from what they had seen firsthand in the demo when I had done the demonstrations on ammunition effectiveness. So that's it's my favorite part is to get people realistic information and to get past impressions people have that, from Hollywood, TV, gun show, mythology, false advertising, blatantly false advertising by ammunition manufacturers, that sort of thing.
Right on. Yeah. So I think Alan just kind of dropped off right there, but I'm going to give him a couple minutes to come back on. Maybe it'll fix the sound. But yeah, just dovetailing off of what Chuck said right there. He brings blocks of ballistic gelatin to the class, and he actually invites people to shoot the ammo. Well, to present the ammo that they carry, and then we can see in front of God and everybody like how effective it is. And that was extremely eye-opening for myself and for others. Yeah, so that was really cool. Another thing that he brought to the class was his analysis of the FBI shootout on April 11th, 1986. And, you know, the projectiles that were used there, the Gen 1 silver tips that really just did not penetrate into the heart of the two attackers, the bank robbers. I know their names, but I refuse to say them. So but that right there was extremely effective. Now, bringing up the our final answer for this, but definitely not the least, Tammy. So, Tammy, what was your favorite myth?
So I've had to change it 3 or 4 times because everyone kept stealing it. But I think really for me as an instructor is what this whole class is all about. When we teach instructors to teach people when they're aiming, to aim for the center of the chest between the nipples. And we know that's not really the ideal spot. And then we teach them as long as it's anywhere in this 8-inch circle in the chest, it's good enough, which is also not the correct answer. And I think that just in the class, when they started moving the mannequins around and your brain wants to shoot at that same spot where you've been taught over and over again to shoot at, and it's not hitting where you need it to hit, that was really just eye-opening and kind of completely changed the way I teach and talk about defensive shooting.
Right on. Yeah, it was pretty impactful. Just the
Hey,
all the
Mikos,
yeah.
I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
You're a very good shooter. You're also a very experienced shooter. You have gone through a ton of classes. What was the aha moment for you?
The aha moment for me was just the marksmanship standards that were required in order for you to do well in this class. Like, so I'll steal your thunder for maybe like 30 seconds, right? So, but what happens here is, you know, if you go to some of these classes where, hey, you need to do a bill drill in 2 seconds, or you need to do 2 body, 1 head in like a second and a half or something like that, you usually get rewarded for that, and you know it makes you feel good, right? But what happens, what we see time and time again, not just in these surveillance videos, but you know what you guys brought to the class was that that's simply not good enough. You know what I mean? Like, you not only do you need to be hitting at the high center chest, but there's actual anatomical structures that you should be seeing and you should be putting your sights on. One eye-opening section of the class was something that Andy actually brought in, and it was that where I thought the heart was not actually where the heart was. So, you know, the hits that I would have put on a target would not have been anatomically correct. You know, they wouldn't have stopped the fight. In identifying the portions of the heart and the portions of the aorta and the major blood vessels that you can use to drop an attacker's blood pressure to what Troy Miller said, to 0/0, right? Instead of 120/80, drop it down to 0/0. That was a big deal for me. And also, you know, identifying where the brainstem was. The brainstem was in a different place than I thought it was. So, you know, sometimes it takes medical professionals, and it also takes dudes that have been there and done that to teach us what these are. And I'm grateful for the class.
Mikos,
but Andy, thank you.
Sorry, Mikos, before you move on, can I have either a do-over or another turn that's a historical hat tip back to a perfect use of myth? We have to remember that what we're experiencing right now is a resurgence, not that we're figuring this stuff out for the first time, especially the targeting stuff. But if you want to see the historical stuff that goes all the way back to 1990, when Louis Auerbach was doing this, there's a book and miraculously called Hit or Myth, which is one of my favorite puns or whatever that ever is. And the secondary title is An Analysis of Target Systems for Practical Training in Defensive Shooting, 1990. That's 35 years ago, the targeting stuff. So we're in a resurgence, we're not figuring this stuff out for the first round. And it would be we would be remiss if we didn't give a hat tip back to those people. He was an operations instructor at Gunsight under Cooper back in the day. And his book, Hit or Myth, is currently $0.00 if you have Kindle Unlimited. So if you want to go back and see where the three-dimensional targets were really in their infancy and somebody who was figuring this out that really truly was a pioneer, we stand on Louis' shoulders. So.
Let's see. I feel like there's a lot of instructors, like, so there's Louis, there's, Dr. James Williams, and there's a lot of pioneers out there that really laid the groundwork for what we're doing here. So it's really, I'm grateful. Before we move forward to the guest questions, we're running up on an hour, and I understand I very much value the time that you're providing for us. So if all you can give us is an hour, that's good. But we're going to stick on for a little bit longer just so we can, we can hear from some of the questions from, some of our guests. Some of the viewers that we have here. Okay. So also, now that we have Alan back, Alan, can you speak? You have audio? Okay, Alan's frozen. he's having a great night. All right. So he was able to message me what his favorite myth was. And it was that the adequacy of max scoring areas of popular targets, going back to the old FBI targets right up until the too low, zero down circle of an IDPA target. So, a lot of these targets are just utterly inaccurate, especially the B8s and not the B8s, like the B27s, the B29s. So those end up being really inaccurate. So, Steve.
Actually, it says adequacy. It's inadequacy.
Yeah.
So that's another typo.
Well,
problem for
reading is hard, man. Words are hard. So let's talk to some of our viewers here. They have a couple of questions. So Nathan Bearfield. Oh man, Nathan. Gosh dang. All right. So I guess I'll read his, right? So he said that he'd be interested in learning how Bear Arms training can help on the East Coast for this group. I'm certain I'm not alone with this. Is there any interest here in this group on teaching on the East Coast? Are you looking for hosts?
We're always interested in teaching, but again, the problems is that both Andy's and my blocks are very, very, very prop intensive. And so it's very difficult for us to, go long distances without incurring a lot of time and expense. So right now, I'm not seeing any other options.
Okay, that makes sense. We have another question from Front Sight.
It would be cheaper and easier for them to fly to Memphis than for us to load up all of our materials and drive to the East Coast.
That makes sense. That makes sense. May not necessarily be safer, but but yeah. So Front Sight asked, Chuck, I don't know if you said it, but talk about the difference in performance with and without the clothing. I think what he's referring to is, the clothing of, the denim on the ballistic targets, or maybe even the clothing on the 3D targets that we use during the class. Can you speak a little bit about like the effectiveness of clothing on targets, as far as just how bullets react when they hit clothing?
So there's a couple. I'm assuming that since it was directed to me, it would be more of the wound ballistics aspect, which we know heavy clothing can alter the performance of jacketed hollow points, sometimes significantly if you have a poorly designed bullet or one that's fired out of a barrel that's too short for the performance parameters of that bullet. But we know going way back that often jacketed hollow points will clog and not expand the way we would want them to do. So there's a lot of good modern jacketed hollow point bullets that have come out of like the FBI BRU studies and that sort of thing, and out of those performance parameters, things like HST and Gold Dot, which are outstanding, and they work both summer and winter, both with through a clothing barrier, not through a clothing barrier. So part of what I try to get across with my ammunition demonstration is choosing ammunition that works robustly in a wide variety of circumstances, including through heavy clothing that an attacker might be wearing, like a Carhartt coat or whatever the case may be. The second way I could take that question is what we find when we have the 3D targets, that people on the street aren't wearing a t-shirt that has a little target that says shoot right here. So when you start covering up the cardboard, you start covering up the paper, not only do people have to look at the 3D target and pick the anatomical area to put the bullets, but the clothing, like a black t-shirt, will hide where the bullet went. So you have to be certain of your sight picture, read your sights, that sort of thing, or you will have no idea where the bullet went. That mimics what we see on the street. Is you can hit people, and if they don't show a reaction, it's not like at Hollywood where you have big spouts of blood come out of the bullet hole. It just doesn't work that way. Often you can shoot somebody and have no idea where on the body you actually hit them unless you had a good idea of where you're reading your sights. So as you may recall with the drills, once we started putting clothing over those targeting areas, then visualizing where that area is on the body, and then did I actually hit in the area I thought I hit, becomes two problems that the clothing just adds to.
That makes a lot of sense. And we saw a lot of that in the class over and over and over again, because, the same thing that I found, anatomical structures were not where I saw them, like they were, I didn't, it's interesting. So we have one last question before we move on. Now, Go Hard Tactics asked us, is there any way for us to see a recording of the summit? And I could think of a couple of different avenues that we can get this out to more people. Like I'm thinking let's see. So I know that like concealcarry.com, they have they have a Guardian Nation, right? Where there's a video library of trainings. I know of Active Self-Protection with John Correa. They record a lot of classes. What else? What other ideas do we have here? Like, is that something that you may be considering, or something to leave the door open for?
As far as I'm concerned, not at this time.
Okay. Yeah.
I would. The reason why I think is because the learning that we provide in this event is experiential. It really would not translate worth a darn to video, or I don't think.
That makes sense. Like sometimes you just got to get out there and do it, right?
Yeah, you can read a book on how to swim, but you need to get in the water.
Yep.
That's a great analogy. I need to write that down. All right. So,
and in closing, I just want to say, I'd be remiss without saying for Chuck that all of the work that he's done with shooting through denim does make him a certified, bona fide genius.
If that ends up getting edited out of the show, I hope you don't hold it against me.
I will not. I will absolutely not. I'm a punaholic with very, very little recovery.
We're gonna keep that in. Yeah. Alrighty. So let's see. We're
and if you come to the summit as a bonus point, you get 2 days of listening to Troy's puns.
Bad jokes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And Chuck has a good array of dad jokes as well. Yes, I can tell from personal experience.
Well,
so
Dr. Williams puts
has grandpa jokes.
a bad dad joke thing out, and we're just following in our mentor's footsteps.
Yeah. So we're wrapping up. If there's any last parting shots then now is going to be the time. If anybody needs to take off here, I totally understand. But, last comments before we get out of here. Steve?
Yeah, I just thought of this. I probably should have actually put this in the class itself, or the block we teach. We're mostly talking about, surviving a fight by stopping the adversary as quickly as possible. It's primarily focused on using handguns to do that. But one of the things that we really don't probably think about is that surviving a fight means that you have some medical training in the event that you get shot. It also means that you have to have some idea of managing the aftermath, most especially when law enforcement arrives, so that you don't get shot. And to remember, everything we've said about stopping an attacker is true in the reverse. That is, if we are shot in a gunfight, it doesn't mean that we are going to die. If we are shot and still in the fight and still conscious, there's a very good chance that you're going to survive. And in that case, focus on the job and win the fight.
Amen, brother. Amen.
And we
Shane?
do have a medical block to teach you how to survive also, thanks to Doc K.
Right on.
Hey, one thing I wanted to say, Memphis, was point out the website that we have now. So www.tacticalanatomysummit.com. It's in its early stages, but you can go on there. You can see the new logo, get a description of the course. You can see all the instructor bios that are on there. We'll be putting the sponsors that are up, and you can also see the list of future summits that are coming up. Just wanted to throw that out there before we closed out for the evening.
So it's tacticalanatomysummit.com. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So tacticalanatomysummit.com.
Tactical Anatomy will take you to Dr. Williams' site. It just came. It just flashed up on the screen, so that'll take you to Dr. Williams. There you go. Perfect.
Yep, that's it. Callie put a lot of work into it and continues to, so I got to give her a shout out.
And we appreciate it.
Yes.
I was going to make a comment about all you had to do was sleep with the lady who designed the website. And there we are. Thank you for doing that. So.
Well, Memphis, I think you're the next one that we're going to be seeing in class. I think we finished up 2025. I think we're going to kick off 2026 with you in Memphis. So, hope you're ready.
That's gonna be awesome. Yeah, that's gonna be
Can't
awesome.
wait.
Yeah, I hope Memphis is ready for it. I hope the city's ready for it. So
I'm sure it will be.
Steve?
Yes, and we are currently making plans to bring the Tactical Anatomy Summit to the Dallas Pistol Club in Carrollton, Texas in 2026. So I'm working with Wayne Dobbs at this time to find a date that works for everybody, and we should have that up for the people to see in the very near future.
Right on. That's excellent. Is that going to be on the website as well, or on tacticalanatomysummit.com?
It will be.
Fantastic. Awesome. All righty, folks. From the bottom of my heart, thank you all for making your time out of your busy schedules. You could have spent that time with your families. You could have spent it at work, but instead you spent it with the viewers that we had here and also the viewers that are going to watch the recording. So from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you so much. And then one last thing, to our viewers at home that are watching, I just want to thank you for sharing your time with us. Okay. You could have spent that time with your family, but instead you're spending it with us. And I just want to let you know how much it's appreciated. So thank you. Folks, thanks again. Welcome to Memphis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.